Hi. If you're new or if you're back after a long time, I go by the name PsychFate and I do like fashion and art stuff and music stuff as well. On the 5th of November, it will be a year since I released my first song. The song was called Blue Rain, and I thought it would just be fun to come and talk through how I made it. I think the best place to start would be in May of 2024. I think it was the 1st of May. I went to see Kenya Grace live. I love Kenya Grace. And I got home and I was just like, damn, I gotta make a song for real. Some more good background context is the fact that I did go to university for music production. I had a bit more of a personal focus on like electronic, slightly alternative, like pop dance music. At the time, I never put any vocals on my songs just because I had so much else going on. I did not want to have to worry about trying to figure out, based on their reactions, whether or not my professors thought I could actually sing or not. I did write lyrics for a couple of things, and those got pretty good feedback for what they were. Yeah, when it actually came to Blue Rain, it was my first time putting an entire, like, pop style standard song together. It was really going and seeing Kenya Grace that inspired that like final step for me to go home and literally start making the song, I believe, the next day. I found what I think is the first file. I learned how to use Logic during my degree, and Loops is their equivalent of Ableton Live in a way. Look, this is the kind of thing where I understand all this stuff, but I never talk about it out loud, so it's gonna be interesting. But let's just hear what like the first row of loops sounds like, and I think you'll find it sounds quite familiar. It's thinking. Okay. There's something special sauce about it that's missing. There's a very key element to the song Blue Rain. The name Blue Rain, by the way, it kind of started as placeholder lyrics in the chorus, but I kind of know what it means in my mind. The whole song in general is about this feeling of kind of doubting people's intentions and getting to know you. The phrase, you don't like me, you just wish that I was Blue Rain, or you want me to be a really specific idea of sad. I don't know how else to put it. I think it might be a like weird girl experience. It's almost like being manic pixie dream girl is someone wanting you to be the right amount of sad to be dependent on them. And thinking about that, I was trying to think of what I could add to the song to kind of represent the times in my life where I felt like that. And I'm known, unfortunately, to talk to myself in the voice memos app. I once in my life got the most, dare I say, sloshed I have ever been. I got home and started recording, and that recording eventually just turned into me bawling my eyes out in like emotional and physical pain. A combination of neurodivergency and the pandemic. I had a slightly arrested development moment and then all of a sudden drank more alcohol than I'd consumed so far in my life combined in about 4 hours, and it went pretty wrong. But I still have that recording, and I figured, hey, so I pulled that voice memo out. It's called December 2nd because that is the day it was. And I just tried to grab some interesting sounds from it. Yeah, that would be the one. So I just pulled all the sounds which I thought, hey, I could totally sample that sound of me crying. And there's a lot of... It's quite distressing, but I was then able to put my little thinking cap on and be like, how do I make this sound more like a song? And eventually, somehow, with a load of channel settings. Okay, let's first of all play them without any of the plugins on. So these are the loops I came up with for, I guess it's almost like a counter melody. It's almost like a hook. Yeah, so everything's been slightly altered, obviously. And I put on, in order, ensemble, pitch shift, pitch correction, an EQ, and then echo and reverb. And I am now going to play you the last one, which is the one which appears in the actual song Blue Rain the most. So that is the hook of Blue Rain. It's me crying. I kind of like the idea of art being like you have to give something up. And that's what I'm giving up. I am sacrificing, like, a vulnerable moment. And in doing so, like, the art becomes more impactful. Even without people knowing that's in there, it obviously has given, like, a slightly stronger emotional connection than the other 2 songs I've made in the past year. Anyway, I'm gonna now show you the earliest file I can find where we've actually got a bit of song going on. And this is all still in, like, May of 2024. And what's funny is I think this is the one with the trap beat. The trap beat didn't make it into actual Blue Rain, but I'd still like to do a remix with it in. But we're starting to hear... And then after that, I'm like, I don't think the trap beat's the one, so I go back to like a straight. One thing that I do think got lost in the final product of Blue Rain was there was something slightly like Nokia phone about it originally. It had a lot of just plain like sine waves in it. When your dad's phone is ringing, it just says Mike Electrician and you have to run through the house. I admit, I don't know the exact order of events of like making the beat and then writing the song, but I do know I wrote the song on break at my job in hospitality 2 years ago, and I will be restarting at the same place next week. It's such a funny full circle moment. So at this point, I'm just like throwing around ideas with the same instruments, the same chord, coming up with little loops of what in each instrument could be doing, but I haven't yet laid out like a verse chorus structure. Is this where I figure out the like dance break? Yeah, this is all starting to sound really familiar in this file. This is where I first do vocals, okay. So we can see what I'm going for, which is kind of cool. And now on the 31st of May 2024 at 12:26, I have a file called Blue Rain, which is the first time I kind of known what it's called. Okay, there's quite a lot going on in this one. Oh, so this is the verse. Did every promise made and broken in one frozen breath. Never trusting you again. I really love to drag out the making of a song, clearly. But no pre-chorus plans yet. And you know what's really interesting and really quite messy and slightly ADHD of me? Is there is still, at the start, the trap beat version and then the original chorus, but I had to have them there for reference so I could figure out what it was that I liked about them in the first place. Okay, it's very similar to the last file. We just got a bit more structure going on, and now I'm just gonna see what happens if I like jump ahead. This one's called Blue Rain Tip. I'm so fucking mad. Purple headphones. If I'm jumping around trying to figure out if something sounds really bad or really good, I will just try all my different earphones. These are my purple earphones. When I was age 10 to 14, I got through about 10 pairs of earphones. I was so lucky if earphones lasted me more than like 4 months. But then one day I got, regrettably on Amazon, Panasonic earphones. I'll put the exact name. They are just like aux plug ones, and they lasted 3 years. So when those ones broke, I replaced them with another pair. And then when those ones broke, also after 3 or 4 years, I replaced them with another pair. Currently, I have purple ones. But I am so used to hearing music through these earphones, because it's basically the only way I've listened to music for the past decade, that I have to mix on them a little bit. Like, obviously, I'll use proper mounting earphones all the time, but that is my car test, is like using Panasonic earphones. So that's why it's called purple earphones. I obviously was like, this isn't fucking working, so let me get out my purple earphones so I can figure out what it actually sounds like. So, Blue Rain Tip, I'm so fucking mad. What am I up to in this file? Finally deleted all of the weird stuff at the start and end, or I've moved it to the back of the file. We have intro! I can't be that fucking mad. Okay, yeah. This is so interesting to me. I hope it's interesting to you. So I haven't recorded any vocals yet at this point. And we have all the way up to the second chorus, and you can see a semblance of dance break. When I was making this song, I made there be so many different tracks and so many channel strip settings and plugins. I unfortunately did make it so I couldn't play it without my Mac crashing, so I had to work on the vocals in a separate file with only like the bass, beat and chords. Let's jump forward to the 26th. So this is after I moved. This is important psych fate law. Last year I moved in August and then moved back this August. I just had like a chance to live not at home with my parents for a year, and I was like, yeah, I'll do that. That is what finally got me to release music, just because I had an unemployment scare briefly. Okay, this is the first one where we've really got the color coding going on. This is good. Okay, so this is basically the finished song. So over the months I've still been working in hospitality. I'm finally kind of adding to it. I've named everything. Some of the names are silly, but they're all named. I have test vocals which have bounced out from the other project with all the vocals in. I'll never trust a word you say. Not after every promise made and broken in one. I think what's slightly interesting is I don't know if I'm that much better of a vocalist now, but I certainly have more confidence and more forgiveness in myself, and I would just end up in such a like spiral of like there'd be one line I really didn't like the way it sounded, and I would get really hung up on like re-recording it over and over and wouldn't necessarily be better. As much as I like the outcome of Bully Rain in the context that I made it, I think I did an okay job. There are a lot of times where the sound of the room, is what you'd say, on the vocals completely changes, because one of them was recorded on a Tuesday in June in this room, and another was recorded on a Saturday in August in the room where I lived last year. Bruh, this is like therapy. I'm telling you too much. I have postnasal drip sleep, so the quality of my voice does change a lot day to day, as does everyone's to some degree, like depending on how hydrated you are, how tired you are, etc. I feel like you can genuinely feel and hear, like take to take, what's happening in my sinuses each day. Like, this really isn't bad. We're really close to the finished song at this point. Different second verse instrumental. I had so much trouble mixing the second verse. It's all coming back to me. Still, I'm like, I know I get it better. I get it better on the actual song, but still I'm like, turn XYZ down, turn XYZ up. I just need to make some decisions, re-record like the odd vocal line, but I just didn't really get a chance to do that until I locked in October. But it's so interesting how different it is. Finally, on 28th of October 2024, we have the finished song. I've just had a proper look at what files are in here. This is so funny. At the bottom, I have 2 reference tracks. If you're wondering, reference tracks for mixing and mastering, it literally doesn't matter what song it is in terms of genre. It just has to have the overall like balance that you want. And I just tend to grab things that are on my laptop anyway. It's a bit embarrassing that it's a Hanram Eng downloaded though. But I have Dream Glow by BTS as one of my reference tracks. And I'll try and demonstrate to you like what the point of doing this is. So let me just... Yeah, so I would toggle back and forth between the song and my song and just check that my song doesn't sound incredibly quiet, loud, bassy, tinny, etc. in comparison. And this is the finished file for Bully Rain, and there's so much to look at. I actually don't know where to start, but I might just go down like instrument to instrument. Oh my god, there's so many. No wonder my laptop was freaking crashing. I'll be the first to admit I might have overdone it, because like King of Hearts is nowhere near this crowded. The Fool is like 4 channels. This is interesting. I got like a little percussion, which is just me like gasping. From the same clips the hook is made from. Some of these names are crazy. Bro, why is this therapy? I had an OC during the worst time of my life called Isla, who was a mermaid. And so anything that sounds kind of nautical to me, like it could be a sound coming from the ocean, I just stick her name on. And I've just given those slightly different like tones and textures and built them up. And then I chuck the one underneath to give it like a bit more like pluck and bass. Speaking of bass, so this is an arp on it. And you might notice that says Sky and not Psych, and that's because I made a song that was going to be called Sky when I was at university, and this is obviously the bass sound I designed for it. It was kind of based on like deep house, mostly from K-pop songs, because the only time I've ever listened to deep house is like Shiny View, FX4 Walls. And then I had these strings are from, was it Spitfire? And I just put a ring shift on them so they kind of feel like a bass. I love a ring shift. I love ring shift and like the fluttery sound. I've got some like reverse reverb sounds which have been bounced in place to like introduce things in. To my knowledge, this is a splice sample. It's just that little woo at the bottom, which like I probably could have done myself, go woo, but oh well. I feel like I could have made the vocoder louder, like I could have made it louder feature, but I didn't want it to be like a vocoder song. Oh, and finally, one day I sat down and I made a whole like sample drum kit out of sounds on a Monster Can, and I still use them as like little percussion and transition sounds in everything. They sound good with like loads of effects pylon, they sound good on their own. It's this weird paradox where obviously sometimes adding organic sounds into a super electronic song can stand out so bad in such a bad way, but on the whole, if you warp them enough, I think they can sound really cool and they can kind of elevate the sound a bit. So let's just listen to a couple. I do find that really interesting. I do think there's something about throwing real sounds through digitalization as opposed to purely like digital sounds, which can be very interesting. Let's have a little look at the chords and pads because I haven't really done that. I believe that's just like piano and then the star pad. And I do think something that is true is the fact that everything has to sound somewhat good on its own in order to all sound good together, except for kick and bass. And just stuff which has like an opposing groove to like what's happening already is what can really make things like interesting. Like this is so different to what is already in the song in a way, and I think it's kind of fun to have the strings and then what sounds like just like a freaking like trombone or something, do you know what I mean, in this really electronic song, but it sounds so dramatic. It adds something kind of theatrical about it, and if we're gonna pretend I'm a genius, that's what I was going for. Oh, this is the other splice sample, is to just like make it a bit heavier on the second time around each chorus. I also have to point out my channel, this is robo-tuned for the really like over-processed backing vocals, is a reference to My Babysitter's a Vampire. Yeah, you gotta, here's the thing, I am number one believer that you have to be having really silly, stupid fun, but you gotta make it a bit funny silly, and I think that's how you make interesting stuff, is you have to like amuse yourself as you go, and that's in a weird like backwards way, that's how you form like an emotional connection with what you're making for yourself, and then other people can not necessarily psychically know what you're thinking and feeling and knowing while you're making it, but it creates that space for them to make an emotional connection to it as well, I like to think. I'm saying all this with my 100 streams, so proud, but of course I am. Like, that's crazy. I remember being 10 being like, I will have at least one album out by the time I'm 13. Of course fucking not. But I think I have changed so much this year in so many ways, just because I've just started doing stuff. And it's not even necessarily that anything's amazing, but my life has changed because I'm just doing stuff that I used to say and think I would do, and instead I'm actively doing it, and that is making an impact on existence. It's really that simple. But yeah, thank you so much. I hope if you have heard Blue Rain that you enjoyed it, and if not, that you could check it out maybe if you like it. I hope this is added to the lore. I hope it makes you appreciate it more. Every single song, whether it's by one person, by 12 people, no matter how many people work on it, no matter if it does have samples in it or not, every song has some weird freaking story to it somewhere. Yeah. That's the moral of the video.